Hello everybody, welcome back to Advective Weather for Update 2 on Typhoon Dolphin. It's currently headed towards a largely unincorporated island chain, also largely considered as a tourist attraction here that's near the Japanese islands, and then it's headed in the general direction of Japan. So we have a lot to talk about today, but these islands are looks like the Ogasawara Islands. Hopefully I pronounced that right. But that's what these are, the Ogasawara Islands that are right on the crosshairs of this storm now. So let's talk about it in more detail here, and then we'll get to the nitty-gritty of what the impacts look like for all of you. So here's how the storm looks in more detail. It's got a rather well-organized eye still, that's well-defined, and then it's got a rather large eye around the smaller one that's starting to form. A lot of that convection still on the southeastern side, showing that this storm is getting wind shear at this time, and it really is starting to open up and look weaker. It's currently a Category 2. This hot off the press from the Joint Typhoon Warning Centers is Typhoon Dolphin, Category 2, currently a pressure of 949 millibars and maximum winds of 95 knots or 110 miles per hour. This thing's moving west-northwest at 14 miles per hour as of August 3rd at 3 p.m. if we're looking at Tokyo time. At this time, it's at 25 degrees north, 147.1 degrees east, and again is heading in the general direction of the Ogasawara Islands at this time, which is this chain right along here. It's just a bit to the west of the storm at this time. So here's the forecast cone for the storm overall. You'll notice it's expected to weaken from here on. That is the expectation. It's expected to gradually weaken. So by the time it gets to around those islands, we're expecting it at 85 knots. So that's going to be right at around 100 miles per hour, and it's expected to hold the line there for a bit before weakening to a Category 1 storm with winds of 80 knots or 90 miles per hour as it heads in the general direction of Taiwan, China, Japan, South Korea. So this thing is generally on a weakening trend over the next couple of days. That's the good news, but this storm is still nothing to scoff at whatsoever. So let's talk about that in more detail. So as we zoom into this first island chain, that's the Ogasawara Islands, we're seeing that this is likely going to pass through as a Category 2 storm around the same strength it currently is. Currently 95 knots, that's 110 miles per hour, expected to be at 100 miles per hour upon arrival. So gradual weakening, but still a Category 2 upon arrival to these islands, and it is going to bring some impact. So let's look at the simulated radar. This is what it could look like upon arrival. This is the Global Forecast System model. May consider using the Euro in future. I think that this model, just because it is a bit higher resolution, shows you what the storm may look like a bit more accurately, though. So let's take a look at it as we move through the frames. The outer bands start to arrive. This is around midnight as we move into August 4th, Tuesday, for these islands. Again, this is in Tokyo time. So this is in the local time zone of the places that we're talking about. So this is going to be at midnight on the 4th. By the time we get to around noon on the 4th, that's when we're expecting that outer eye wall, as we would call it, to arrive. That's going to be when the highest waves, the heaviest rain, and the strongest winds are expected to arrive on these islands, especially if you're in the southern portion of this island chain. That's where we're expecting those winds and storm surge to be the most robust. The eye will then move overhead, so landfall in these islands will occur around 6 p.m. on the 4th. Then the outer portions of the backside of the eye wall will move through. We're expecting around 9 p.m. to midnight, with the remaining outer bands out of here by the time we get to around the late afternoon hours on August 5th. So let's rewind a bit, and now let's take a look at this from the perspective of total precipitation. So here is the amount of rainfall that we're expecting to move through from this storm, and this is going to be about 4 to 6 inches. 4 to 6 inches is what this model is currently showing. This could very well be higher. I would not be surprised if we start seeing 10, 12, 14 inches within this pink swath in particular. And again, I think 8 to 10 inches a possibility, even in the northern side of things as well. So just something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on with time here, but lots of rainfall expected in the future. We'll hit that rewind button again and go to wave heights so we can see just how high these waves are expected to get. But once we get to around the top of the scale here, which unfortunately you're going to see, that's around 50-foot waves. So let's take a look at that in a bit more detail. And you'll notice it's mostly on the northern end of the storm, but waves well over 50 feet are a possibility, especially near the central portion of this island chain. That's highly impactful and could mean that there's going to be significant inundation as this storm does start to move on. So this is the impacts that we've talked about for here. This is going to be significant. It's going to be a significant storm. Nothing out of this world for this area. We've seen storms like these before move through, but this is going to be larger. It's going to last a long time, drop some heavy rain. The winds won't be super remarkable, but the rainfall and the waves, especially as you head farther north, are going to be more impactful. So we want you to stay safe as that occurs. Not sure we have this right now, the probability of those typhoon force winds. This is getting more refined with time. We're not exactly seeing that product loading in properly tonight, but that will be back, I'm sure, in future updates. So now let's take a look at this from the perspective of the secondary area that we're looking at. So the Okinawa Islands. That's this first island chain, alongside with southern portions of the mainland of Japan. We're looking at South Korea a little bit, including Jeju, and we're looking at the entirety of Taiwan now, being within this cone. This cone shows where tropical storm force winds could occur. So this is a Joint Typhoon Warning Center cone, not a National Hurricane Center cone, which means, again, we're looking at where tropical storm force winds could occur, not where the center of the storm could move through. So if you're in the cone, you could get impacts. If you're out, you're actually out with this kind of cone, really, in terms of the potential of being impacted, either because you're out of range. So if you're in Wuhan, if you're in Shanghai, or you're right on the edge there, that's because it's a little early for you to be within the cone, but I wouldn't be shocked if you enter the cone in the next little while. But if you're in places like Tokyo, if you're in Luzon or those portions of the Philippines, you're out. And you're probably not going to see many, if any, impacts from this at all. But as this storm moves through, likely to be a Category 2, to a Category 1, depending on what part of the progression we're at. But the wind speeds are negligibly different. 90 to 100 miles per hour, still the expectation. So it's going to be a borderline Category 1 or 2, regardless of which side that falls on. It's not going to change much for what you guys experience at home. So let's take a look at the simulated radar. You'll notice, here it is. As this storm starts to move up, you'll notice that the outer bands start to impact the Okinawa Islands around 9 p.m. on the 6th. Now, this is not something that we can get super specific with, and that's because this storm is going to probably progress a little bit differently than this exact depiction. This is just one possibility. But let's say late evening into the overnight hours, August 6th, that's when we're expecting that this is going to really start to move in. So then, when's the eye wall going to arrive? Expect that around the afternoon to evening hours of the 7th, that Friday. So if you have any Friday night plans, maybe it's time to postpone those, change those a bit, especially along the Okinawa Islands. When's the eye start to move over? This thing really starts to slow down at this point. The eye isn't moving over until mid to late day on Saturday, and it lingers there for a while. We're not seeing this thing really start to move away until Sunday. So this is Sunday afternoon, and we're still seeing outer portions of the eye wall of this very large storm around here. Now, this is taking a bit more of a northward track in this particular solution than the forecast, so let's imagine this maybe travels a little farther south, but it's not outside of the realm of realistic possibility. Now, for those of you in Taipei, Shanghai, you may be wanting me to keep moving this forward, but we just don't have the confidence to keep moving this forward and be able to tell you that the potential depiction this shows is super accurate. So we're not going to do that today, but trust me, if you're in Shanghai, if you're in Taiwan, if you're in other portions of China or South Korea and you're concerned, we'll continue to keep you updated over the next few days as we get more information. Let's take a look at those totals, those potential rain totals, and you'll notice they are very robust. We're looking at 10 to 20 inches of rain in the Okinawa Islands. We're looking at well over 5 inches of rain there in Taiwan, and we're looking at 5 to 10 inches heading into Shanghai, heading up through around southern Japan and into South Korea. And that's just because the storm is so large and it's going to slow down so much. So the rainfall potential is definitely something that is raising some concerns. And the wave heights are going to be huge as well. So don't be caught off guard by this. The wave heights are going to be 50 feet or higher in the core of the storm because it's just so large. It's able to swell up a lot more water. And so your storm surge, your inundation is going to be higher, even though the winds don't reflect that. This was was at one point a Category 4 or 5 typhoon, and so it's still going to have those residual higher waves, and it's going to be a larger storm. So we still want people taking that storm surge, that flooding threat, very seriously. There's going to be a lot of water. The wind is not the biggest threat with this. It's the water, the storm surge, the inundation in the Okinawa Islands alongside the rainfall there. That's going to be the biggest concern. Is this going to be some out of this world insane thing you've never seen before? Probably not, but still, the rain is going to be on the higher end of things. So let's just keep an eye on that over the next few days. Again, we don't see this probability of typhoon force winds having come in this update. We'll have that back in future updates. So before we go, let's just take a look at the global tropics. Genevieve has dissipated and the Eastern Pacific is no longer a concern. We do have Invest 94W out here in the Western Pacific. It might actually end up developing. It's currently near Luzon at this time, likely to move into the South China Sea. We'll just have to see what happens with it. And then, of course, we have Dolphin, which is a Category 2 storm with those winds at 110 miles per hour. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel so we can make more content like this, and I hope to see you in the next update. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave those down below, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. All right, I'll be back around this time tomorrow with another update on Typhoon Dolphin. Stay safe, everybody.